Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2. Today I'm going to be going over everything that you guys need to know in order to efficiently and quickly blast through the endgame in Season 2 Diablo 4. A ton of stuff has actually changed in terms of how you want to most efficiently go about things, the best way to get loot. I'll also go over how you want to get gold, fastest XP farms, and how you guys can actually spawn the Uber bosses to get some of the best items in the game, including Uber uniques. I've partnered with Apex Gaming PCs and put together my own custom line of computers and chose parts that are optimized not only for the best performance, but also to get you the best price. With there being 3 different tiers to choose from, you can pick the perfect PC for your needs, and you can even further customize the PC to your liking. With the unique tier offering a 4070 and a 5800X, you're guaranteed to get absolutely insane performance in not only Diablo, but a ton of other titles as well. And with Apex, you can also finance your PC so you can get that juicy upgrade without having to pay all the money at once. For a limited time, you can get an entire 10% off of a computer by using my link in the description, so make sure to check that out, and a huge thanks to Apex for sponsoring today's video. Alright, I'll go over a quick endgame intro for you guys, and then we'll talk about what each of the events actually do, and then I'll kind of go into some of the most efficient ways that you guys want to approach the endgame. Obviously, the endgame actually starts at World Tier 3. The reason for this is because you start getting access to sacred items and unique items. You can now do nightmare dungeons, Helltides unlock, you can do the Whisper Tree, etc. Once you're in World Tier 3 though, your goal is to actually get out of it and get into World Tier 4, obviously because ancestral items start dropping and you can get new uniques, but also when you're in World Tier 4, you get 200% increased XP. So your goal is basically to get to World Tier 4, and then once you're in World Tier 4, you want to efficiently farm out XP, gear, try to get to level 100, try to kill the Uber bosses, perfect your build, etc. In order to get to World Tier 3 though, we need to complete the Capstone Dungeon. In order to do this, I'd recommend being at least minimum level 45, because once you get to World Tier 3, sacred items will start dropping, and you can't equip those till level 45, so I'd recommend getting to 45 first. What's the most efficient way to get to level 45 though? When you spawn into the game, you'll spawn in right at Kedbardu, and it'll ask you to do some of the seasonal questline. I'd recommend doing the very intro part of it so that you gain access to some vampire powers. Talk more about these later, but right off the rip at level 1, you gain access to Undying and also Resilience, which I would recommend never taking off pretty much, almost for any build. Kind of depends. Maybe if you're really tanky, you might want to keep them on or take them off, but at level 1, these are insane. You'll gain access to these, and then I'd recommend just ignoring vampire powers until around World Tier 3 when you start needing the actual power. At this point, you are like level 5 or something. You want to go to the Domhain tunnels right above Saragar, and you want to stay here until level 45. It's really, really boring, but the amount of XP that you get here is like triple doing literally anything else, quadruple. It's insane. You level up very fast. You can get to level 45 in less than 2 hours if you really cared. If doing the Domhain tunnels is making you want to absolutely gouge your eyes out, the only other thing that's really worth your time when you're in World Tier 2, or sorry, World Tier 1 or 2, depends. World Tier 2 is technically faster for leveling, but if you're having a hard time, just play World Tier 1, it's not that much worse. Anyways, there's not much else to do that's really efficient for leveling, so the only other thing I'd recommend doing is some dungeons that are around the area, or just anywhere on the map, right, that actually have codex powers that you care about. Imprinting codexes is very expensive early on into the game, so you won't use these until you're around World Tier 3, World Tier 4, but it's good to have these unlocked. For example, I should have unlocked this one because I actually need it now, and I've been wanting to use it forever. I just have been too lazy to go and do this dungeon, but prior to level 45 would have been a great time for me to do that. Once you're level 45, then you just want to go and do the Capstone Dungeon, which is very, very easy if you're level 45. Now that you're in World Tier 3, you gain access to all of this new stuff. Briefly, I'll mention the fastest way to get from World Tier 3 to World Tier 4, and then I'll talk about all the different events so you guys know how to best use your time. So, unfortunately, the best way to get from World Tier 3 is just how you got to World Tier 3, is to just farm the Domhain tunnels around level 60. So you only need to get from 45 to 60. It'll take you a couple of hours, but in between farming this, like it'll get really, really monotonous and boring, right? So in between this, you can start to do a lot of the other events, but doing nightmare dungeons at this point in the game is not worth your time because the Domhain tunnels is just so insanely powerful for just leveling up and getting to level 60. Once you're level 60, then I'd recommend doing this Capstone Dungeon. Level 60, it'll be very, very easy. Especially, all you need is like some fire resistance on your gear, and the last boss is going to be a piece of cake. And again, you want to be level 60 so that you can actually equip the ancestral items that dropped. The second that you get into World Tier 3, I would recommend doing some open world stuff and getting some sacred items right off the rip, just some sacred weapons, because if they have higher item power and they are sacred, they're going to have significantly more damage. Then you just go back into the Domhain tunnels. But if the tunnels is making you hate your life and you want to get some stuff that'll make your character more strong, Let's talk about some different ways to do that. So the first thing is whether or not you actually care about doing the season quest and subsequently the seasonal journey. In order to progress the seasonal quest line, you'll need to do some of the seasonal journey, which can be a little bit difficult. Not difficult, but it can just be pretty time consuming. You can't start doing this stuff until you're actually in World Tier 3 anyways, so just don't worry about it until you're in World Tier 3. But once you're in World Tier 3, you can start progressing it. The reason that you would actually care about progressing the seasonal quest line is only if you want some of these vampiric powers that you can only get from doing the quest line. So for example, Ravenous requires me to do a Witness in the Dust quest. This is one of the best vampire powers in the game for almost any build because attack speed is just so insane. And you get this after doing the, I believe it's the second part of the seasonal quest line. So this one doesn't take all that long, but getting like Metamorphosis, for example, that took quite a while. I had to finish the entirety of the seasonal quest line, and depending on your build, it's really not that worth it. For me as a rogue, it's really good. I just have permanent unstoppable now, and it was definitely worth me grabbing, but it took quite a long time. So if you don't care about like Metamorphosis or some of these other powers that say that they are acquired just from, you know, doing some of the other quest lines or different parts of the quest line, then I wouldn't do it. But if you're like a Stormclaw Druid or an Arcalash Sorc, you want to get it done very quickly so that you can gain access to Moonrise, for example. When it comes to unlocking some of these other vampiric powers and or upgrading them, the best way to do that, or only way to do that really, is from getting vampiric blood. You can get a ton of vampiric blood by just playing the game normally, but you won't get that much if you just want to farm out vampiric blood to upgrade some of the powers that you have already, or to unlock some of the ones that say acquired with potent blood. Sorry, potent blood is what it's called. Then the best thing to do is the blood harvest. All right, let's talk about blood harvest. So there will always be a blood harvest active at some part of the map, so it's not really all that time sensitive. The reason that you'd want to go here is for two reasons. The potent blood, like I was talking about, so that you can unlock your powers, but also it's a pretty good loot farm when you're in World Tier 3. It's not better than doing Nightmare Dungeons really, but it is a pretty insane loot farm if you wanted to. It can be a little bit difficult like when you first get into World Tier 4, but it's really good when you first get into World Tier 3 or World Tier 4 to get some of the very early on ancestral and sacred items. But also you can farm these in the previous tier and unlock the sacred keys, and then when you get to World Tier 4 right off the rip, which is what I did, at level 50 I was running around opening these chests and getting ancestral items. I couldn't equip them at level 50, but I had a full stash of ancestral items because I banked up all these keys and I just ran around and opened these chests. So let's talk about these chests and stuff. So anytime that you go in here, there's always going to be 3 different events for Grim Favors. We'll talk about what Grim Favors are good for, but basically just opening the caches at the trees, which got a massive buff. So I'd recommend if you are in here trying to complete these, but some of them are bugged, some of them take like a crazy amount of time, but typically like the kill the 2 Bloodseekers is very, very quick. Basically what you do when you're here is you just kill a bunch of mobs and try to complete these, and then once you kill enough mobs, you will get enough blood lures to activate a Sanguine Altar. When you activate a Sanguine Altar, here I'll just show you guys killing some mobs, and hopefully I'll get a blood lure because I'm just 1 away. So you need 15 blood lures to actually activate a Sanguine Altar. So I got 1 blood lure there, and as you can see, I also have a chest here that I'm going to open with a seeker key. So as you can see, from opening the chest, I got 3 more blood lures, some potent blood, and I got 2 items, but often they drop way more items than that. But once you have 15 blood lure, you can just go to a Sanguine Altar. These rotate on the map. I don't know the amount of time that it takes for more of them to spawn, but you can always see them on the map, and per blood harvest, there's multiple. Oh, here's some more chests. As you can see, I have a ton of keys. I got some legendary there, and you also get packs. The packs are good so that you can deterministically put packs on your gear and unlock all the vampire powers that you care about. So now that I'm at a Sanguine Altar, I'm going to deposit my blood lures. Didn't deposit, geez. Okay, it deposited, and yeah, so I have to actually kill the Bloodseekers in order to get the potent blood. I've never looked at that. The Bloodseekers can be a little bit hard if you're like just getting into the world tier. It says they have DR, but there's not even a DR mob around. Okay, the guy's over here. Excuse my noobery. So once you kill them, they drop a crazy amount of loot, and also they give you a pretty good amount of potent blood. I believe that was around like 60 or so that I got right there. Usually they drop significantly more loot than that. That was not very much loot, but they also give you the key so that you can unlock the chest, right? I'll just go do another one real quick just to show you guys, because usually they give way more loot than that. Alright, so there can randomly actually be seekers around the map as well that you want to look out for. So I just killed 2 right there, and as you can see, I got a pretty sizable amount of loot. And if I wanted to stay here, I could very easily stay here and just farm out a whole bunch of blood lures and then just activate all the Sanguine Altars on the map. And then once you've activated all of them, you can decide to stay and try to finish your Grim Favor stuff. You can open all the chests around the map because there's usually like a ton of them, right? And that gives you a pretty good amount of not only potent blood, but also loot. or you could just leave. That's pretty much all you need to know about the Blood Harvest. Obviously fantastic for getting potent blood. I was able to get over 150, I believe, by being in there for like 5 minutes. And it's just a great way to also get loot when you're early into the game, but it's not as good as Nightmare Dungeons for loot. Typically, when you're done farming a Blood Harvest, you'll have enough Grim Favors to open up a cache at the Tree of Whispers. Other ways to get Grim Favors is just, there's usually an area that has Grim Favor rewards, so you can do like a dungeon to get 5 Grim Favors. You only need 10 in order to unlock a cache. A great one to do is always the PvP boss. You can just TP here, kill the boss in like half a second, and boom, that's 5 Grim Favors pretty quickly. And then once you have 10, you can open up a cache. The reason that the cache is good is because usually there's a legendary one here, which gives you a crazy amount of legendaries, but also a ton of gold. They massively buff this to give you a crazy amount of gold. So if you need gold, don't ever sell your items. Just only salvage your items, and then you can just open these caches. Here, my inventory is completely botched. I'll just drop this. You can open these caches. As you can see, I'm at 30.7 mil. It gave me some XP as well, like 900k. You open this, and I went from 30 mil to 30, so I almost got 5 mil, but if you have a legendary cache, you can get up to like 12 million gold. It's pretty insane, and as you can see, I got 3 boot legendaries just from doing this. But you also will typically get materials that you need, such as Malignant Hearts, and also, there should be one on the ground, but I can't see it. Usually there's Malignant Hearts, and as you can see, I got a Blackened Femur so that you can summon the Echo of Varshan, which is right here. I'll talk about the Uber bosses in a second and how you guys can actually summon them. Other events that you guys care about is going to be World Bosses and Legion events. World Bosses are great because it in World Tier 4 is always going to drop 925 item power items, and if you get a 925 item power weapon like this, the damage is significantly higher than other stuff. So highly recommend doing a World Boss every time it's active. It's active every 3 hours. When it comes to Legion events are only good so that you can get the material so that you can spawn the Glacial Fissure boss. Events don't really give you all that much loot, but it also can give you this horse if you care about it. The last endgame activity that you care about is Helltides. I'd recommend going on to helltides.com so you can see when the next Helltide starts, or you can download Mobalytics, which is a sponsor of mine, and it'll actually show you in-game the amount of remaining time until the next Helltide. As you can see, the next World Boss is going to be in 3 hours, and the next Legion event is in 20 minutes. Helltides are very, very good, but you don't need to interact with them how you previously used to. What you want to do is you go there and you get 300 cinders so that you can unlock the living steel caches. The reason that you care about these is because they give you a crazy amount of Fiend Roses and Forgotten Souls, which you need to be able to reroll at the Enchanter and to upgrade a lot of your gear. Not only that though, you need these living steel in order to summon one of the Uber bosses so that you can then fight Uber Duriel at some point. I wouldn't really recommend trying to farm out the mystery chest in the Helltide anymore because it's simply just more efficient XP wise and loot wise to just do Nightmare Dungeons if that's what you are really after. But I would recommend going to every Helltide and trying to unlock at least 1 living steel chest. Every time that you do that, you'll get 3 living steel, and like I said, you get around 10 to 15 Forgotten Souls and a ton of Fiend Roses. In order to see where the living steel chest is, you just go to helltide.com and it will show up on the map. Let's talk about the Uber bosses real quick. So there's actually 5 Uber bosses. One of them is Uber Duriel, which requires you to kill multiple of the other bosses in order to actually summon him. This guy's level 100, so we'll talk about him last. The other ones are Grigoire, which is level 75, Echo of Varshan, which is also 75, Lord Zir, which is level 80, and Beast and Ice, which is level 85. To summon these guys, they all need different stuff, so let's talk about each of them individually. I'll leave a link to this in the description so you guys can see which items they actually drop. The only reason that you care about Beast and Ice or Lord of Zir is if you want the specific items that they drop. But in order to fight Echo of Duriel, Uber Duriel, you'll need to fight Grigoire first, and you'll need to fight Echo of Varshan, but you don't need to fight the other ones. I farmed Grigoire quite a lot because I wanted to get Penitent Greaves, but it turns out that Echo of Varshan was also dropping Penitent Greaves, and I guess Lord Zir also drops those too. So it really just depends. If you want like Mad Wolf's Glee, for example, then you do Lord Zir, or if you're level 85 and you really want, I don't know, Howl from Below, or a Death Speaker's Pendant, for example, or I guess even Ring of Vendelm, you could do Beast and Ice, right? Let's start with Grigoire. So you just need 5 living steel in order to actually summon this guy, and you get 3 living steel per living steel chest in Helltide. So if you are fighting or doing it by yourself, you get 3, but you can actually trade all of these. So if you're in a group of 4, opening the living steel chest, you'll get 12 in total, and then you can just trade it to one guy, and then you can go and summon him. You summon him down here. There he is at the Hall of the Penitent. He's very, very easy to kill, so I wouldn't really worry about it. As long as you can just survive his attacks, you'll be perfectly fine. Once you kill him, he will give you 1 rock. I don't have it right now. It is called the Shard of Agony, I believe. You get 1 of those, and you need 2 of those to kill Uber Duriel. The next one is Echo of Varshan, which is actually right here at the Tree of Whisper stuff. You need a ton of materials to fight this guy. You need 1 Gurgling Head, 1 Malignant Heart, 1 Broken Femur, or blackened femur, and 1 trembling hand. All these materials just drop from doing whisper caches, so if you want to fight Echo of Varshan, all you got to do is just farm out a ton of whisper caches, and then you can go in there. You can also turn some of these other items into the other ones deterministically, so you can turn Malignant Hearts into a guarantee of any of the other ones that you want, and you can trade in Trembling Hands to these caches that have a chance to drop as something else. Again, all these materials are also tradable. When you kill Echo of Varshan, it will give you 1 Mucus Slick Egg, and you need 2 Mucus Slick Egg in addition to 2 Shard of Agonies to actually summon Uber Duriel. Uber Duriel is level 100. I was able to do him at level 88 pretty easily. Depends on your build, of course, but if you get enough poison resistance, it's very easy to fight this guy. And Uber Duriel is going to be how you can get all the Uber uniques, such as Endariel's Visage, Harlequin Crest, Ring of Starless Skies, and some of the new ones that are particularly good. So if you end up wanting to farm all these, I would highly recommend doing pretty much every Helltide that ever shows up, and also frequently doing Whisper caches so that you can get all the materials to fight Varshan and also fight Grigoire, and then you get, again, 2 Shards of Agony, so 1 each from each Grigoire kill, and then 2 Mucus Slick Eggs, 1 each from every Varshan kill, and then you can go summon Uber Duriel. Hopefully this isn't too confusing, but it's pretty easy once you understand it. And then if you want to farm the other bosses, so Glacial Fissure, this is very easy. You can just summon this guy just by doing Nightmare Dungeons above tier 30. You need 9 of these to enter that, and that's pretty simple. And then if you want to find the other guy, which is Lord of Zir, you need to do a good amount of world bosses as well as Legion events. World bosses seem to drop 3 of these, and I believe you get 1 per Legion event or so, but I could be a little bit wrong on that. Lord Zir isn't easy to see on the map, so I found a YouTube video, so credit to this guy. Basically, he's all the way down here at the Darkened Way in the Fractured Peaks, and then you just enter this little mine shaft here, and then you go in, and he's level 80, and then you can summon him. So this is what it looks like when you actually summon a boss. As you can see, you need 9 Exquisite Blood to summon him, and then this guy probably just dunks on him because he's a Sork, and this boss is really, really easy. And as you can see, he got a unique as well as a good amount of legendary. So it's a good way to get loot, but also target farm specific uniques. But also later into the game when you want Uber uniques, fighting Uber Duriel is definitely worth your time. Last thing that I did not mention is Nightmare Dungeons. Nightmare Dungeons is the best way to get XP once you're actually in World Tier 4, and ideally you want to fight mobs that are around 5 to 10 levels higher than you, depending upon how good your build is. If your build is really good, you can fight mobs that are 10 to 15 levels higher, and you get a massive XP benefit. Just make sure that it is actually efficient. Nightmare Dungeons give you a crazy amount of loot. It's also a great way to get uniques. You get a ton of legendaries and just a ridiculous amount of items. Like 1 Nightmare Dungeon can easily clear or fill up your entire inventory. But also you need to do Nightmare Dungeons for Glyph XP. So I'd recommend doing Nightmare Dungeons once you are around, like in World Tier 4, once you're around level 70. Prior to that, you just want to do the Domain Tunnels because that's the best way to level up. But once you're around level 70, doing Nightmare Dungeons is great to get all that Glyph XP, and just it's great in general for XP. And ends up being better than doing the Domain Tunnels because you can scale Nightmare Dungeons past your level. A lot of the affixes nowadays really aren't all that bad. I'd recommend avoiding ones that like reduce your damage by 60%, but most of the time they really aren't all that bad anymore, and the game is really, really easy as long as you stack resistance, stack armor, and you have enough damage within your build. They're really easy to do. If you want to know which Nightmare Dungeons are best, I'll leave a link to this spreadsheet down below. You can look at which Nightmare Dungeons are most efficient for XP. Honestly though, I wouldn't really worry too much about it. I would just ignore the ones that are in the red and the yellow if possible, if you can remember all of them. But honestly, the difference between the best and like the mid ones isn't too significant, and the best way to, most efficiently spend your time is just go Nightmare Dungeon after Nightmare Dungeon, make sure that the mobs are a little bit higher. When it comes to managing your loot, knowing when to upgrade and when to reroll stuff, the first thing is that you never want to sell items because you get a ton of gold by just doing the Tree of Whisper caches. That it's better to just salvage items. You can get a crazy amount of materials from salvaging, but you can also even get Forgotten Souls from salvaging, so you don't have to live in Helltide in order to get Forgotten Souls. Also, when you're just leveling up and you just need a little bit more damage, I'd recommend upgrading your weapons to like level 3. I'll just do it real quick because it's really inexpensive to get to level 3. It costs some iron chunks, it costs some silver ore, and a little bit of veiled crystals. Past that, it'll start costing materials that you actually care about, such as balefuls and stuff, but you get a lot of extra damage by just upgrading it 3 times. The same premise can be applied to upgrading armor. As you can see, I don't even have a lot of stuff at level 5 yet because it ends up being pretty expensive, so I'm waiting until I get like absolutely perfect items to start upgrading them. Same thing can be said for the enchanter. So if you have like an item that you find to be particularly good, like a really good weapon or something, I'd recommend maybe re-rolling it like 1 or 2 times, but it's very expensive to re-roll if you don't have a lot of these materials. This is why you want to only be salvaging and why it's a really good idea to go into the Helltide. Imprinting aspects is also insanely expensive if you do it from the Codex. It costs 12 coiling wards, and these are insanely expensive to get. You can get like only one from salvaging a legendary armor, and sometimes you don't even get them. So I'd highly recommend saving up a lot of the aspects that you get, because it's significantly cheaper to imprint via an aspect that you get than it is to codex. But as you can see, this aspect is from tier 1, so it still costs 12 coinling wards. But if I have one that is from tier 3, it only costs 6, and then if I have an ancestral one, it only costs 4. So it's better to save up a lot of these aspects that are in higher world tiers than it is to use previous ones, but also obviously you want to save aspects that are particularly good rolls, right? All right, so that was pretty much all over the place. I just want to give you guys as much information as possible. If it was too hard to follow, or you just want a very quick recap, I'll do that for you guys. So in order to get to World Tier 3, you want to do the Domhain tunnels to start out with, which is above Saragar. Just get to around level 45, spamming the Domhain tunnels. You can do some random dungeons here and there for codexes if you get really bored. Once you are actually in World Tier 3, you want to then farm out around to level 60 by doing the Domhain tunnels. But in between doing the Domhain tunnels, I'd recommend doing the Blood Harvest if you want to get some good loot. It's a great way to get sacred items right off the bat, but also it's a great way to get the Potent Blood so that you can start unlocking some vampire powers or upgrading the pre-existing ones that you have. Anytime a Helltide pops up, I'd highly recommend doing the Helltide and going onto helltide.com, which I'll show you guys here, and opening the Living Steel chest. It is not worth it, in my opinion, anymore to do the mystery chest unless you need a ton of gear. The Living Steel chests give you 300, or it costs 300 cinders, and they give you a ton of Forgotten Souls as well as Fiend Roses, but you need to open these in order to get Living Steel so that you can summon the Grigoire boss, which you will end up needing to do, not only to get a ton of loot yourself and uniques, but also to get a material to summon the Uber boss so you can get Uber uniques. So I would do Helltide every other hour that it pops up and just get the Living Steel chest and then leave. Oftentimes when you finish the Blood Harvest zone, you will have enough Grim Favors to open up a Whisper Tree cache. Whisper Tree caches are great for getting gold, but also the material that you need to summon Echo of Varshan, which you will need to summon again if you want some more loot, or if you eventually want to fight Uber Duriel. This is the best way to get gold, so anytime that you need gold, I would recommend just farming out Grim Favors anywhere that you can, and then going and unlocking these. World Tier 3 is also a great time to progress your seasonal questline if you care about getting powers such as Metamorphosis or Ravenous, which you can see if you need to do more of the quest by just looking at the acquisition method here that is listed right beneath it. Otherwise, when you're in World Tier 3, the best thing to do is literally just, farm the Domhain tunnels, get to level 60. Once you're level 60, then you want to do the Capstone Dungeon to unlock World Tier 4. Now that you are in World Tier 4, you want to go try to get an Ancestral item as fast as humanly possible, which you can do by going into the Blood Harvest, and hopefully you have some keys saved up. You can just run around, open up some of the chests, hopefully get some items, and then you want to go back to the Domhain tunnels until you're around level 70, again, doing all the other stuff in between. Once you're level 70, now is a good time to do Nightmare Dungeons. Focus on ones that are good dungeons, which I showed you in the spreadsheet. And this is the best way to not only get loot, also to get XP, and to level up your glyphs, which is very important for overall power. It is best to farm these in a group if you can split up, and it is best to do Nightmare Dungeons around 10 levels higher than you if your build can handle it, because you will get a massive XP benefit. Along the way, with all of your loot, make sure to just salvage everything, because you will get more than enough gold from just turning in the Tree of Whisper caches. If you end up wanting the specific uniques that Lord Zir and also the Beast and Ice drop, just skip to the previous part of the video where I mentioned how you guys can actually summon these. Video was pretty long, but hopefully it gave you guys all the information that you needed, and hopefully that recap was good. If you guys liked it, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe for videos just like this one, and I will see you guys later. Peace.